I had a couple. I had the Dallas burn and the San Jose earthquakes both interested in me right out of college in the draft, and I walked away and took a job at a fly shop for $6.50.
No kidding.
Per hour. Yeah, I left everything.
There you go.
Fish. Yeah, I just tossed it.
Yeah.
People thought I was nuts. My family and everybody around me is like, "What are you doing?"
Wow. That was Justin Spence talking about the experience in passing up a pro soccer career in exchange for a minimum wage fly fishing job. You have entered the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show.
Welcome to the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show, where you discover tips, tricks, and tools from the leading names in fly fishing today. We'll help you on your fly fishing journey with classic stories covering steelhead fishing, fly tying, and much more.
How's it going, everyone? Thanks for stopping by the Fly Fishing Show. In today's episode, I interviewed Justin Spence, the co-owner of Big Sky Anglers in Montana and someone who has lived and fished extensively in Argentina. We talk about how to DIY your fly fishing trip in Argentina, how he turned his first guide job in New Mexico into Big Sky Anglers, and some of the local waters you might want to check out. Justin talks about flies and techniques he uses in Patagonia, what's on his bucket list, and upcoming spay clinics in Montana. Don't miss this as Justin talks about his experience chasing golden Dorado in Argentina and how you might do it yourself.
Before we jump into the show today, I wanted to see if you can fill out a quick survey. Go to wetflyswing.com/survey2 to take the 30-second survey. Or you can just click into the show notes for this episode and click on the link at the top to take this super short survey. I wanted to thank you for doing this. I announced this survey a while back, but made a little boo-boo. I redirected to an older survey I had going. So the info was helpful, but it was not the current survey. So I appreciate it if you can take this one. It should take less than 30 seconds. There's just a few questions there. That'd be awesome. Again, go to wetflyswing.com/survey2. That's SURVEY and the number 2, or click on the link in the show notes for this episode at the top of the page. This will help me to understand better who's listening and help me serve you and everyone out there better. Thanks again.
So, without further ado, here's Justin Spence from BigSkyAnglers.com. How's it going, Justin?
It's going great, Dave. How are you today?
Good to have you on here. I guess we connected through Matt, who I had on the show. I should have had this handy as far as the episodes, but we talked a little bit about single hand spay casting and things like that. And he's with Big Sky Anglers and does some of the social media and management there. But he connected us and got to talking and realized that you're a big, you've done a lot of traveling and some kind of destination type traveling. And I've got some questions here. Specifically, I think we're going to focus a lot on Patagonia and some of the trips you've done and maybe talk about some things to help people understand what it's all about. Does that sound good to you?
Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, Matt's a good friend. We go way back. He and I met late 90s, early 2000s here in West Yellowstone. And he's actually been down to Argentina. I think it was around 2004, 2005, maybe even earlier than that. And we had done some exploring down there back then. And yeah, I'd love to share my experiences with people.
Yeah.
Mostly Argentina, right, Dave? That's kind of what I've been doing the last decade or so.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, whatever sounds good. I mean, I think we could be pretty flexible rolling through whatever comes up here. But before we get into all that, maybe you can just bring us back to how you got into fly fishing and how the whole Big Sky Anglers started, because that's definitely a big name out there, man. I mean, you guys are doing a lot of good stuff. So maybe you just talk about that whole history there.
Sure. So I got into fishing. I grew up in northern Idaho. I lived on the Clearwater River. I lived in Orofino till I was about 8, and got the fishing bug. Just living in Orofino. Watching people catch steelhead, and I spent a lot of my summers up in the North Fork of the Clearwater area. My dad would take us up and we'd camp up there. And so I think I really got the fishing bug in that northern Idaho, area. And after Idaho, we ended up moving to Central America, and my dad took a teaching job in Guatemala, and so we it was a big change as a family, but we ended up going to Central America, and the reason I'm sharing that is the Spanish that I acquired in Guatemala as a kid allowed me to go to Argentina and really travel around. So that's kind of, that's why I'm sharing that is that Spanish background really helped me, probably took me to Argentina and kept me there rather than jumping to New Zealand, right?
How did that all feel? I mean, making that transition, going from the U.S. Down there, what was that like?
Well, as a kid, you just kind of adapt, right? But I got really good at soccer, and that's part of my story too. But Guatemala was, I learned Spanish and learned to play soccer, and I didn't fish much, but I always, any chance I could, I did a little bit of sailfish. We fished the Pacific for sailfish a couple times down there as a kid, and on little pangas and kind of crazy situations. Now I look back on it, we did some pretty wild stuff as when we were down there in the 80s. And got back to the States, moved back to Idaho, and always wanted to fish. Fishing was something that I really think some kids are born fishermen. I've seen that here in Yellowstone as I've guided families and kids. Some kids just have it in them. So that was kind of me. And we got back to the States, and getting into fly fishing, I really I never planned to be a fishing guide or ever thought I was going to be working in a fly shop, and it just kind of happened. I got a job in college in Albuquerque, of all places, at Charlie Sporting Goods, and I was playing soccer at the University of New Mexico, and ended up fishing a lot on my free time, and got offered a job. And then I ended up in West Yellowstone. There's a few people from New Mexico. One guy, Eric Swanson, who has Eric's Fly Shop here, was from Albuquerque, and that's where Matt and I first met. We both worked at Eric's Fly Shop, and and about the same time I was done with college, I wanted to go to Argentina. I ended up going to Argentina in 2002 with my wife and two friends from New Mexico, Nick and Taylor Streit. And Nick now owns Tao's Fly Shop and Santa Fe Fly Shop. But we had all kind of come together in New Mexico, and just at that time in life where you have no car payments, no house payments, no kids, and you just want to travel, right? It's great. Yeah. So that's kind of how I got into fishing. I was always into fishing, but getting into fly fishing, my first job at a fly shop really kind of exposed me to people who made a career of this. And then I wanted to travel, when I was done with school, I thought, boy, there's nothing better than just getting out and seeing stuff. So Argentina was the first place I really went, and I just kept finding a way back. And, so that's kind of that. And in 2006 I was guiding in West Yellowstone and tying flies, and I started my own business, the West Yellowstone Fly Shop. I left Eric's and started my own little shop, and Matt was kind of over in Portland and chasing steelhead, and he came back to Montana a few years later and helped me one summer in West. And I was just working every summer here and saving up money to go to Argentina. And I would have buddies come down, and we would rent a car and go explore. And that kind of all, took place over 10 years. And then Big Sky Anglers came about, so we haven't really got to that, but that's a cool. Well, we can get into that.
Yeah, for sure. We can dig into that. I wanted to take us back to that. You mentioned that you played soccer for I guess the University of New Mexico.
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty good. I know from most people know being playing any college sports, you have to be at a pretty upper level. So you definitely, there's one thing you picked up from your travels as a kid, right, moving down south.
Yeah, I actually almost ended up at Oregon State playing for a guy named Jimmy Conway. And he was an Irish guy who was coaching at Oregon State in the 90s, and I really liked Oregon State, but my wife Rachel, she wasn't able to leave New Mexico. We had kind of met, and I ended up staying in New Mexico and playing there. And I think it was a blessing, because if I'd gone to Oregon State, I probably never got through college with all the water.
That's right. That's right. So, so did you ever have thoughts of taking, I guess people do play professionally, but was that not something on your mind for soccer?
No, it was. I actually had, I had the Dallas Burn and the San Jose Earthquakes both interested in me right out of college in the draft, and I walked away and took a job at a fly shop for $6.50.
No kidding.
Per hour. Yeah, I left everything.
There you go.
Fish. Yeah, I just tossed it.
Yeah.
People thought I was nuts. My family and everybody around me is like, "What are you doing?"
Wow. Is there some money to be made in professional soccer?
Today there is.
Yeah.
When I was looking at going in, I had a couple buddies playing, and there wasn't.
Not quite.
You were going to do a lot to your body and walk away, and you'd make. It'd have been a good career, and
sure.
I'd probably be coaching today, but I have no regrets.
Yeah.
Following the fish.
Totally.
That was. Yeah. I'm glad
awesome.
Yeah. And so soccer too. I guess Patagonia. Argentina's a big soccer country.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun to go down there and kick a ball around once in a while.
That's cool. And then the New Mexico fly shop, you mentioned, what was the name of the first one you worked for?
So the first one was Charlie Sporting Goods, and it's the Domenici family owned it, and it was kind of it was a well-known, it was a family-run business that it had a fly shop and a hunting shop and kind of a fishing department. There's a guy named Bob Girding who was really well-known in the 70s and 80s and did a lot of teaching and really built kind of the fly fishing part of the shop. And I happened to walk in right when he was kind of retiring, and a guy named Chuck Domenici, who was the owner's son, was just taking over the fly shop, and he was kind of recruiting, people to kind of join him, and it was great. And I ended up working there with a great group of guys. And Nick Streit, who's the guy I mentioned, now has a shop in Taos and in Santa Fe. His father, Taylor Streit, is really an incredible guy. You never really hear about Taylor, but when it comes to people exploring fisheries and, doing stuff before it's been written about, Taylor's one of those people. And he had explored Patagonia in the early 80s and had been going down there, and he invited Rachel and my wife Rachel, myself, and Nick down. We went down we went to Argentina 2002, 2003, right when the economy had crashed, and we were down there in a van driving around fishing for months. We went down for 2 months. It was really a crazy time to be down there, because that was I don't know if you know much about that, but
No.
that was the year their whole economy kind of crashed, and they really haven't recovered since. But it was just a time where, we were just driving around fishing, and he had been down there once prior, and what a cool time. So he's kind of my mentor when it comes to, really approaching the water. He taught me a lot. He guided out of Taos and northern New Mexico, southern Colorado for the last 30 years, and taught us a lot about just looking at the water and how to approach it. And he did a lot more wade fishing than floating because of, northern New Mexico, southern Colorado waters. So I kind of always took that from him. He gave me my first guide job. My first guide job was in northern New Mexico.
Oh, it was. So
before I came to Montana.
Is that what what do you think you learned or took away from that first job at the your first shop, your first experiences?
Well, I always the shop in the city was kind of, my first Albuquerque is, you're in a city, you're in a fly shop, you don't get to fish a lot, but you talk a lot about it. And so it was kind of kind of an interesting place to be, because what was Well, looking back on that experience, what we did is I got thrown into teaching fishing. And if you're going to teach, you have to really learn a lot about it before you can teach it to someone. And you have to learn different ways to present information and to just relate to all the different people that might be taking your course. And so I ended up being kind of an assistant in a lot of classes for years before I ever guided. And then when I did guide for Taylor, it was small stream stuff. And northern New Mexico, you don't have the hatches that you have in Montana. It's more about getting to the water and either hiking or driving a dirt road. And you don't need many flies in your box. But, the teaching part of it is so important. And so I kind of went into guiding with a good kind of foundation in teaching, just kind of casting and, equipment and knots and reading water. And so I just, as I came to Montana, following my years in New Mexico, I got here, and it took me a couple of years. There's so much water up here. You end up really having to learn all the bugs and all the different options. And it was just an eye opener when I got up here. But that's
cool. Yeah.
So Argentina was the playground, right? Argentina was, work all summer long, save up everything I could, tie flies for shops, do whatever I could to earn a little extra money and go down there and fish and have fun. And that was pretty much, what we did. And
sounds amazing. I want to dig into definitely all the your trips down there in Argentina. Before I do, I was just going to note one more thing on the fly shop, because I think it is an interesting experience you have there, and you've had getting up to where you are. And I know a lot of people listen to this show have thoughts of maybe getting in the industry, having a shop. And I had Scott Mcgarva on it in episode 17, and he talked about now he's kind of a rep, and he's does a little bit of guiding still, but he had a shop early on, and he said the biggest challenge for him was that as the owner or the founder or whatever, you kind of almost get stuck in the shop because the people want you, and it's hard to train other people to do a good job, I guess, of running the shop or running that business. Is that something that you've struggled with at all, or how have you balanced, getting out versus kind of being in the shop all the time?
Oh, that's very true. And that's something I'm aware of. I had a shop for the last 10 years that I owned, a very small guide shop with some retail. And I guided more out of the shop than kind of hung out in the shop with the doors open. In fact, we would close the shop doors and just go fishing. And if we were closed, we were closed. We were all just meant we were busy guiding. But that was always something I was really aware of, because I had worked in other shops and I saw that pattern where the owner gets just, bogged down. And so what's unique about Big Sky Anglers is that I have two great partners, Joe Moore and Jonathan Heems. And when we all looked at owning a fly shop, it made sense to do it together. And so we really make an effort to all continue to guide, all continue to get out, and we schedule so that we can all, kind of not get stuck behind the counter and just be in there all the time. And so it's a challenge. I'm actually learning it right now, with our new business. We have a lot more people involved, and but at the same time, we have a lot of people who can guide, who can be in the shop, and with three owners, it allows us to do that. So it's something that we're aware of. But yeah, it's funny you ask that, because that does, I think, happen, right? And it's if you can't get outside and enjoy, all the stuff that we got into this for, it's
exactly.
I hear you.
No, I appreciate it. That's a good perspective.
Yeah.
So maybe we could dig into a little bit on Argentina, and I don't know if you have 2 months down there and all that stuff is pretty amazing. Do you have a kind of a most memorable trip you could share with us, and how it all went down?
Oh man, boy, I have a lot of. Well, my first year in Argentina, we were in this little town of Junín de los Andes. So there's if you think of Argentina, I always compare Argentina to kind of the, think of Montana down to northern New Mexico. And so Montana being kind of northern Patagonia and traveling all the way down the Rockies to northern, New Mexico, or even further, would take you down to the bottom of Patagonia, Argentina. And so there's a lot of variety there, but we ended up in the north in the province of Neuquén to start. That's just kind of where we first went. And I'd like to, at some point, Dave, talk to, we kind of got into this, you and I, before we got into this interview, had talked about sharing some tips with people so they could do this on their own. So I've got some just bullet points that I'd like to share with people as we get into this. But, maybe my first memorable trip, maybe one that really kind of is important in the big picture, was the year 2002, 2003. It rained for 3 weeks straight and all the rivers blew. It was March. Like everything went out. It was gone. Fishing was impossible. And I'm talking rivers came up where you couldn't even float them. And so I had this book. There's a book. It was kind of the book that got me to Argentina. It was written by William Leach, and it's out of print now. It was the Argentine Trout Fishing. He was a Peace Corps guy who wrote this book in the 80s. He traveled around in a VW van and fished Patagonia and wrote this book. And it's one that I recommend. I still love traveling with that book down there because a lot of the things he wrote about back in the 80s are still consistent with today. I'm so sure certain things have changed, but it's just a good read and a good reference. And so as I'm reading through this book, it talked about the boca of the Chimiwin River. The boca's the mouth. It's the inlet or outlet. And so this river is really famous for big fish that move in and out of the lake and gets a lot of migration.
Which species are these?
Well, you have brown rainbow trout, and you also have, you can catch, they did introduce Atlantic salmon to this lake, but you're really looking that in the fall, March being fall down there, you're looking for brown trout that are either moving out of the lake down the river to a different tributary downstream or up the river into the lake to find a trip. So you get a ton of migration. And this when the water gets high, these fish will stack right at this big mouth. And I had read about this and thought, man, I'm down here, I'm gonna fish. So it was hard getting up there. I would hitchhike, I would take a bus, I would take a taxi. I couldn't afford a rental car. Rental cars are the one thing in Argentina that are really hard to come by, and buying a vehicle is not an option. The amount of papers that you will go through, and being a foreigner and then trying to even sell it, I wouldn't recommend it. So I didn't have the money to pay, $60, $70, $80 for a rental car every day. So I just would get up there and, fish. And so you're dealing with these huge winds that come off the prevailing winds come from Chile right up over the Andes, and they blow a ton of food into this river mouth. You get crab. There are a ton of it's called the pancora. It's a crab pattern. It looks a lot like a crayfish, but this food, along with bait fish, will get washed in, and these big lake fish come in and feed, and then these migratory fish are coming up. And so I fished this river for probably 10 days straight without hooking a fish. It was a lot like steelhead fishing. And after about 10 days, there were 3 or 4 other locals, and people are kind of quiet there, right? Until they see you. Cause a lot of people read about, like I did, and show up and fish it once and take off and never come back. But a couple of these guys ended up, talking to me and seeing me paying my dues and struggling with the weather and the casts and all that stuff. And, I finally became friends with them, and those 3 guys ended up that today are some of my closest friends and are a big part of why I'm in Argentina. And that's probably the most memorable, is fishing the boca of the Chimiwin. And awesome. I remember catching my first fish in there. I was in this just below the lake, 100 yards downstream, first light, in this just beautiful brown. Took this kiwi muddler off this kind of knee deep water, and I was all by myself up there. It felt so good though, after like 2 weeks of struggling with the wind and the rain and, just getting beat up to finally catch one.
That's sweet.
And,
that's sweet.
yeah, so I think that's probably, and that river is a great river, later in the summer too.
Okay.
It's just the Chimewin's one of the truly special rivers in that area.
Nice. How did you? So it sounds like that might be one tip as far as connecting locally. But how did you find? Do you have a tip there as far as getting the local knowledge? Like you chose a river, and like if somebody's going down there or wherever, what's the best way to? Maybe it's just that, try to find those local connections, or I mean, if there isn't a shop nearby.
There are some fly shops now that, when I was down there, when I first started going down there, early 2000, there were a few shops around, but they were pretty basic, and they're not like in the States where you go in and they share information with you, right? They kind of have some flies, they have some fly lines, maybe a rod or two, and, they'll share some basic information. Today, there are a few more shops around, but it's still hard. Information's what's hard to come by. And so that's the challenge, right? And that's kind of what I'd like to share with people, because I had such a hard time finding out how to get to places or how to think about, fishing down there, lodging, getting around. And so what I'd recommend there are in most towns, there's something like a chamber of commerce, and it's a good place to start because they usually have bilingual people working there because of, they're there to help tourists, who come in, get around. And so I would start there. I would look at, towns like San Martin de los Andes, Junín de los Andes, Illuminé with their kind of, it'd be Centro de Turismo, so the center of tourism. And that would be a good start to just gather basic information on lodging and restaurants. And, you can find out, there's another book that came out, I think maybe around 2007 to 2010, that a guy named Barrett Matson, or it's Fly Fishing Patagonia, the Trout Bum's Guide to Argentina. And it's kind of it's real similar to, the Argentina trout fishing book that Bill Leach wrote, but it's a little bit more current. The stuff it doesn't talk about, those are good guides for, like, here's the river, here's the, the fish you could target, here's some of the food that the fish eat, maybe a basic map on how to get there. But what's hard is, like, where the heck do I stay? How do I get gas? Where do I rent a car? Those are the things that I always found challenging in Argentina. And then the language barrier, because that's another one that keeps people from really, getting to know locals, right? And as you get into, some of the bigger towns now, a lot of the younger people do speak English. But when you get into more remote areas, we would just, I was fortunate. I had I was able to speak Spanish and kind of make friends. And, you gather intel through, drinking wine at an asado all night. And someone says, you should go up here. Here's, my family owns this ranch. Nice. Here you go, kind of thing. But the hardest thing is just getting around. Huh. But I will say this. So that being said, if you look at Argentina, I don't know where we want to go with this, but at some point I really would like to share, I think, how to do this with people. I think,
well, one thing, you've noted a couple of books and things like that, and I just want to make note that this episode will be at wetflyswing.com/Justin will be the URL, and folks can get all these links and things you're talking about here for resources. But maybe you can just go. You had some bulleted lists as far as DIYing it. So if somebody wanted to go down there, you've already given a few tips here, but maybe you can just walk through those bullets and kind of describe some of the best tips you have.
Okay. So stuff, if I was doing this, I have people occasionally shoot me an email and say, hey, I can't afford a lodge. I want to go to Argentina. How do I go about it? And that was me, right? Like, I could never afford to, go to a lodge in Argentina and get on a private estancia. And so, I always, approached it from, all right, I'm down here, how do we do this? And so, first thing you fly either into Buenos Aires or you could go to Santiago, and those are kind of your major cities that you'd fly into. How you get from either city into Patagonia, you can take a 10 to 20, 25 hour bus trip, which is interesting and fun if you have time. I've done that many times. And if you have the time, that's kind of a neat experience. If you don't want to be on a bus that long, you can fly right into Patagonia in 2 or 3 hours from either city. And once you're in Patagonia, there are rental cars, but the rental car is really tricky because one, you're gonna, for a little kind of two-door kind of Ford or Volkswagen that really can't get you out on dirt roads, you're still paying $60 to $80 per day, and you have limited kilometers. And so that's what gets you, right? Is everything's so spread out. And so you take these little cars and you drive them in places you shouldn't really drive them. And then you take them back and you owe almost as much as you paid in rental for, you owe for the extra kilometers. And so it's to get a truck, if you're looking at a Toyota truck, you're probably looking at close to $130 to $150 per day. And so that's the expense, right? Yeah. So, you go down there with a couple friends and you say, all right, that's a big part of our budget is the truck. Now, that being said, if you're going to camp, which is really possible, and it's fun. Argentina, a lot of college kids, a lot of people hitchhike camp throughout Argentina, throughout Patagonia in the summer. That's a big deal there. So you'll see a lot of people out enjoying the outdoors and just kind of hanging out, and you can definitely do that during the summer months. And so, let me take a step back. December. So the fishing season in Argentina runs November through May. Okay. Some places close their fishing at the end of April because the fish are spawning in May. But really November through May. November is a lot like it's a lot like May and June in kind of the Montana, Idaho. You deal with a lot of runoff. You still have kind of that wet spring, cold weather. By December, you're into kind of early summer, and the rivers have really come into shape. You've got good hatches starting. And I'm kind of talking about the Neuquén province where I spent most of my time. And but you would apply this to even stuff further south. By January, February, you're in midsummer. Great time to be fishing down there. But what you run into is all the families are out of school, just like in the States, right? So all the kids get out of school mid-December, and January, February is summer. And so everybody's traveling, and towns and hotels and places can get crowded, and rental car prices and everything goes up during those months. So that's important to know if you're doing it on your own, right? That December 15th till the end of February is an expensive time and even a hard time to get around because of the crowds.
Right. So maybe March, April might be the better times to hit it there.
I think yes, and that's kind of what March and April. If you don't, so this is another thing that March and April allow you to do if you don't have access to a boat, is the rivers by March and April are lower, and so now you have a lot more access, walk access to rivers that in the middle of summer are really big, high flowing rivers that you really can't fish well on foot. And so March and April are not only less crowded, but they just, you have more weight access because you can cross things that you normally wouldn't cross in the middle of summer, without a boat. And so, those are the things I think that are really important, is like, when would someone go down there on their own and have good access to fishing? And that I think that March and April is a good time frame. Now, March and April fishing is, you start getting into some cooler nights. It's kind of like September here, right? September, October weather, where it starts cooling off. The mayflies, start showing up, but you get those big migratory fish moving around. Cool. And that's a lot of fun. So once you get to Patagonia, you got to look at, how much time. I think you need time down there.
Yeah, like what would be a minimum, like a 2
weeks,
2 week,
2 week is minimum.
And what would
and
be,
that's
what would be your best case scenario? Like,
I think you need a month to 6 weeks.
Okay.
And I think you need to really kind of set that time aside. And if you had 2 to 3 people who could split expenses, and you had, a month to 6 weeks, and I would start north. And you might start north. It depends on the time of year, but you could start north and travel south. And, if you're, I'm going to throw out a couple provinces here for, kind of, I would almost compare them to, the Montana, Idaho, Utah, Colorado, and that would be, so if you looked at the Neuquén province in Argentina, there's rivers like the Chimiwin.
How do you spell that?
Neuquén?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Neuquén. It's Neuquén province. Okay. That's a great place to do it yourself. There are a lot of rivers that you can get out and wade fish, and good access, and just a great place to kind of base out of. Tons of water. One thing in Argentina that, it's like Montana. You can walk high water mark, so there's no private bottom. Mm-hmm. But the problem with Argentina is you have a lot of willow trees that line the banks. And so those willow trees, if you have to stay in the water, there are places that you just can't walk. And it just is impossible to stay in the water. So the willow trees make fishing on foot very challenging. Mm. But in the national parks, which a good part of the Neuquén province, the headwaters of a lot of these rivers that I've been mentioning, like the Illuminé, the Chimiwin, the Cojuncura, the smaller streams up in the mountains start in those national parks, and all of that. There's good camping and good walking, and there's some great small stream fishing to be had in these national parks.
And what type of when you get in there, say if you go into the province you're talking about, what's the technique there on fishing? Just kind of a quick little summary.
You really, it's not as technical as it is maybe say on the Henry's Fork here. You need a good selection of dry flies. So you're not going to really focus on hatches. You can on certain rivers, but you need a good selection of, size 10 to size probably 18, patterns, maybe even 8. You're going to fish a lot of terrestrial stuff, in February and March.
What are if you had to say your top 2 or 3 patterns that you kind of go to?
So a big Chernobyl pattern. There are a lot of big beetles, big ants, big stuff like that. So a Chernobyl pattern is great because you can change the body material, right? So you can mix it up. But it's just those fish, like those big kind of foam patterns, the big browns especially. So beetles, ants, dragonflies in the summer. So that Chernobyl pattern can really be any of those depending on what you use for the body material.
Do you guys have some links to some of the patterns you use on your website or somewhere out there?
We will. We will this fall. We don't at the moment, but we will have our patterns out there this fall.
Oh, perfect.
But a big Chernobyl pattern, a variety of nymphs are good. Again, 10 to 18, because you go from, there are some stonefly nymphs, but you have a lot of caddis, a lot of mayfly stuff. You want to have stuff that sinks fast. You also want to have stuff that doesn't have a lot of weight that you can sight fish, like a Sawyer nymph, just a pheasant tail with a nice kind of copper thorax that just sinks just under the surface. That's a great one. But flies aren't. You don't have to get too. You don't have to match the hatch as much as you do in other places, but you need a good variety and sizes, and then streamers and crabs. So if you really want to go to Argentina and target like those big browns, they're eating crabs and they're eating bait fish. And people who they say, I want to catch that fish. Well, that's what you're going to be fishing, or a big beetle or something. But you're usually fishing subsurface stuff for those big guys.
Nice.
So as you hit Neuquén, if you come south, you get into Rio Negro, and there's the city of Bariloche. Bariloche sits right on a big lake called Nahuelhuapi, and the Limay River, which is a famous river that produces some incredible brown trout, basically is born right outside of Bariloche, and it flows north and meets up with a lot of the rivers from Neuquén, and then cuts across the country and hits the Atlantic. And so that Limay River, when you really want to look for, that fish, is a great place to do that. And it's got an interesting scene. March and April, you get a lot of people spay fishing the river mouth. You've got it's a new thing. It's a younger group of guys who are, picking up spay rods. And again, it's a great place to do it because you don't have back cast room and it's big water. And, but the province of the Rio Negro, where the Limay is not a great place to fish small streams. It's just there aren't a lot of options. So I almost would tell people to, check out the Limay, maybe check out the lake, but then head further south to the next province of Chubut. And that's spelled Chubut. So Neuquén and Chubut are the two places where I think you have, if you're a trout guy looking to really explore the middle of Patagonia, Argentina, those two provinces would be the places I'd spend my time. And Chubut is different climate. Up in Neuquén, you have a lot of high desert. When you get into Chubut, you start running into, a little bit more rain. You're closer to the Chilean side, and you have some really neat, big rivers, spring creeks, lakes, fun place to hang out and fish. And those two provinces, boy, you could easily spend a month to 6 weeks between them.
Yeah, that's cool. I was thinking about the nymphing. This is kind of more of a general question, but when you're detecting strikes, is that something that's fairly easy? Do you have any tips there? This is maybe more of a general just nymphing question that I get, quite a bit. But if you are fishing nymphs, are you kind of doing it the standard way down there, or is it like you would up in Montana, or is it a little bit different?
That's it. Well, I typically in Argentina don't fish. I'll fish a dry dropper, but I don't do a lot of. You don't see guys using a lot of like indicators and just running an indicator down a river and just fishing a slot. We'll fish a lot of dry dropper stuff. If I'm in canyons in pocket water, I'll just kind of tight line them where I'll keep my, just kind of fish a slot and just feel. But a dry dropper is probably more of what I do.
Okay.
I really like what I love in Argentina. I love fishing big dry flies and moving them. We fish a lot more action on the flies down there, and you get some really aggressive takes. And I love streamer fishing down there. Streamer fishing really covers the water, and a lot of those really big fish will come out and look for a crab or a bait fish imitation. And then you do get those little windows where you'll have caddis or you'll have a mayfly hatch where some big fish will get up and feed. And that's fun. But I think people go down there with too light of a rod or too soft of a rod. Oh, yeah. I'd almost say the rod, if you were going to take one rod for trout, you almost need just a really solid 6-weight. And when you're here in Montana and Idaho, Yellowstone, we tell people, you can almost do it all with a 5. But yeah, I'd say Argentina, you need a good 6.
And you have the wind too, right? Is that a factor down there where the heavier wind is going to help a little bit?
Yeah, wind is a big deal. It's something, you learn to row in the wind there. You learn to fish in the wind. You learn not to fight the wind, or it just beats you. So you learn to use the wind to your advantage. But it can make for, some great days because those big fish come out when you have real windy days or you have real kind of, low light. Those days where just a lot of people stay home. That's when those big fish come out. It's the same here.
Cool. Yeah. Cool. No, that's awesome. I want to follow up on a few more tips, but this is great. I think it gives, folks an idea how to get down there, maybe a few areas to start and do some research. And, of course you can do the whole Google and do a bunch of,
research there. But I want to check with you. We talked to. I think you've got a pretty interesting life story, with your connections and stuff. Is there anything, a story throughout your history that, you think about that really had an impact to get you where you are today?
Oh man. I don't know if there's one story, but I would just say there's just been a lot of really incredible people who have, just kind of, just shared a lot with me along the way, from guides to people in the industry. And, I've just been really fortunate to, just kind of connect with them and kind of see that you can make a career of this. And it's been a lot of fun.
That's kind of one of the tough things. I've talked to a lot of people, and, I think fly fishing is such a small niche that, it is a challenge, right? I'm sure you have lots of challenges, kind of doing what you're doing, but, do you have any tips for anybody out there that wants to get into it, maybe have a fly shop or a business, or, how to kind of get to where it sounds like you connected with some amazing people along the way.
I've told a lot of the young guys at the shop now, that are here working with us at Big Sky Anglers, and I've encouraged them before they have a house payment and they have kids and car payments and all that kind of stuff to get out and travel and fish and just meet as many people and fish as many different places as you can and make those connections. I look back at, those 10 years of traveling before kids and we traveled all over Argentina and met people from northern Patagonia to the bottom of Tierra del Fuego. And those people today are the people that I work with. As I've guided in Argentina since 2008, and we didn't really get into that. That's another deal. But, those people that I met along the way have been, the people that today, as we start this new fly shop, are the people that I'm working with. And it is a small world. And, the same thing in the States. I did fishing shows from Washington to Southern California when I was working for Eric. We did those for about 3 years. And I would, the people that I met at these fishing shows from, Seattle to Denver to, we ended up in LA one year. Those are people in the States that I today am working with. And so I think you want to get out and just fish as much as you can and travel and meet people and just keep sticking it out. It's not easy, but it seems like the longer you stay in it, if you can build those connections and maintain them, y'all kind of help each other, stay in this. Yeah, it's good. It's a lot of fun. It's a great group of people to work with, and man, it's allowed me to travel, and I love traveling.
Yeah, that's right.
And fishing new water,
Yeah, you've not only Argentina, but you've traveled a few other places around the some other destination areas.
Yeah, so I've done a little, in South America. I've done a little bit, and I've been starting to explore the golden Dorado in Argentina. I kind of got spoiled. I ended up fishing Bolivia to start for golden Dorado, and that came through a buddy that I met in southern Argentina on a steelhead river years ago, and he's now been in Bolivia for a long time running some of the stuff with Simone, and so I was able to go in there and check that out. But I got the bug, and I've been checking out some of the fisheries in northern Argentina for Dorado, and what a fish on the fly, man. I can't say enough about it. It's just a really fun fish to target on a fly. They're just aggressive, and they get up in the air, and they're fast and powerful. And I've told people who come from trout fishing, they really connect with Dorado because reading the water is similar. Like if you think about floating down a big river, high water, throwing a big streamer at the bank and hoping a big brown's going to come off and find it. And that's what you're doing for Dorado. And the Dorado can, be 10, 20, even 30 pounds. They're just, they're vicious and just fun. They just, great fish.
That's awesome.
So that's something I'd throw out. It's hard to do on your own. That's something I didn't really kind of mention as a do-it-yourself kind of thing. But
Yeah.
if you're in Argentina and you want to check out golden Dorado, it's a little more accessible than Bolivia is. I've done a little bit of stuff. I go up to Canada every year and kind of steelhead fish some, and that's something I really love to do.
Cool.
And it's a fun fish, and I've been a few other places.
Yeah. Do you have any anything on your bucket list that that one place you haven't been to you want to get out to?
Yeah, I really want to do. I really want to do Norway, and I want to do it. I know the fishing there is kind of you hear mixed kind of reviews, but I want to go spend a couple weeks and just drive around and try to catch a fish on my own and do that kind of thing where I'll never probably be able to afford one of those high end rivers, but that's okay. I just like to go over there and just kind of experience Norway and try to catch a fish over there. And that's one, that's on my list.
Nice. Yeah, I was just listening to there's a few podcasts I listen to in the fly fishing space, and Anchored is one. Definitely, I've listened to a bunch of those. And actually, April, who I'll have on the show as well, but she was interviewing a guy from the Norwegian Fly Club, I think is what it was called. But it was a pretty interesting episode. He went into all about the lodge they have there, and actually they talked a little bit about how there is a little bit of folks that do kind of do it yourself. So there are ways that you can get down there, and if you can still utilize some of their resources, but you don't have to hire a guide. And it sounds like I've never fished for Atlantic salmon, but it sounds like it maybe is even more challenging than steelhead, which is definitely
right.
Definitely you should have some time. I think your 4 to 6 week thing is amazing, and I've done a couple of long trips. I did one that was a 6 week trip, and it is, if you can do it, that's pretty amazing stuff. So yeah, that's what they mentioned there though. If you can do a little more time, I think, maybe a couple weeks would be good over there, but just all depends on what you have going. Right.
Yeah. That's, when you do these do-it-yourself trips, something I've learned is if you take 3 weeks out of those 3 weeks, I've done a number of these. I think you might get like 7 to 10 days of really special fishing. And then you have another handful of days where it's okay. And then you have another, 7+ days of just nothing. And it's just a bust, or you just, nothing really works out. But that's part of that do-it-yourself trip. And that's the fun is not knowing. And I've kind of really come to like that and accept that. So, I always tell people when they say, oh, I've only got a week to go down and do it on my own. I say, man, if you only have a week, it's really hard to and you have such high expectations at times going places. And so you need extra time if you're going to do it on your own. But that's the stuff we were talking about, where you do have time to be at a bar and you meet some locals, or you're out on the river and get talking to someone and they say, well, hey, you know what? I've seen you here a couple of days. Why don't you come check this out? And that's a fun part of having the time and doing it on your own, right? That's a cool thing.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that is probably one of the biggest tips, is just get some more time. Do you have any other tips you would recommend?
Oh boy.
Just for, I know you've thrown out a lot here. I don't know if we missed anything as far as other DIY kind of tips.
Heading south, what are some other things that I wanted to mention? There's another book that's kind of fun. It's called, a guy named Cameron Chambers wrote this. It's called Chasing Rumor. And he I think Patagonia published this book for him a couple years back. But it's really a fun. He talks about going down there. I think Cameron's originally from Montana, but he went down there, maybe thinking he was going to write a fishing guide, and it turned into a very different kind of book. And it's really cool because it talks about all these things that all these people he met, and it paints a real different picture than just the how to, where to fish. And I think it's a really cool read. And as you go down there, Argentina, is a different place. The pace of things aren't like in the States. Things don't always work like they do here. And you almost have to just keep a real open mind to, how things work in other places, and just accept that, the store closed at 12 o'clock today and it doesn't open till 6. And you say, well, how could that be? It's closed for 5 hours for a siesta. What am I going to do? I need supplies. And so what do? You go sit on the plaza and drink beer, meet locals. I mean, just kind of roll with it and be open to what each place gives you, and don't be in a rush. I think I see people that come down and they just want to get to the river now, and they want to get things done now. And you're like, hey, we're not in the States anymore. We're in Argentina. And the beauty of being in Argentina is that things don't work like they do in the States. There isn't a set boat ramp. There isn't a set takeout. We got to, if there was, there'd be a lot more people down there, Yeah. So I kind of say, just keep a real open mind to what the place gives you, and just, and if you get to know people down there, a lot of doors open. If you spend a little extra time just hanging out in towns and meeting people, it's pretty cool what kind of fishing opportunities come out of that.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's cool.
Yeah.
I was just kind of thinking more, maybe you can, on Big Sky Anglers, talk a little bit about what you guys have going there for anybody that's interested. And, I know you're out in Montana, but just give us a rundown of what you guys do over there.
Yeah, it's really exciting, man. It's kind of, it really is a dream right now. It's been so Joe Moore, Jonathan Heems, and myself, we've all kind of outfitted in this area for the past 20 years, and we've all kind of worked together, at times, and Bud Lilly's. So we, before Big Sky Anglers, Big Sky Anglers has been around. Joe Moore started it a number of years ago. It was his outfitting business, and we bought Bud Lilly's Trout Shop, and Bud Lilly's has been around since the 50s, and we have realized, one, I knew Bud, and I was fortunate to know him, and what an incredible guy, and as we're in this location, so we're at the Bud Lilly's Trout Shop location. We've changed the name to Big Sky Anglers, but we have people walk in that have been coming to, Bud Lilly's Trout Shop for over 40 years.
Oh, wow.
And they walk in, and it's really powerful to see, people come in and tell their story, how they started fishing in West Yellowstone 30, 40 years ago with Bud Lilly, gave them their first fly, they bought their first rod. And so, in some ways it's really big shoes to fill. And one thing that I think we're doing here is we've got a great group of people who have come together, guides, shop guys, outfitters. We've all joined to kind of form Big Sky Anglers, and just having fun in this. We've all traveled a lot and guided and fished on our own, and to come together is really fun. So I think we have a great group of people, and just want to share our experience with other people. And we have Idaho Henry's Fork permit, so that's really cool because we get to guide over there. We have the Madison River close by, we have the Gallatin River, we have some great lakes just out of town, and then we have Yellowstone Park. And so it's just a really neat place to be a fishing guide or to do it yourself. If you come here, some people say, boy, the Yellowstone crowds there's so many people, and sure, that's true, but a lot of those people aren't fishing.
No.
And you can drive 10 minutes out of town and put a backpack on and walk 45 minutes and not see anybody.
That's what I was just going to say. It's like the national park thing where 90% of the people don't go more than 50 feet away from their car. It's like you could.
So true.
Yeah.
It's right. Yeah. So I mean, what do? You get in an hour early before the crowds, and you come out later. And and there's just so much water. I drove to Bozeman yesterday and was just looking at all these rivers, and nobody's on them, and they're just getting ready to come into shape.
Yeah.
And so we have a really neat fly shop. We do have a guide service out of the shop as well, but we've got a great shop with a great group of people, and you know, it's a fun place to to be working. Again, I never thought I'd find myself in this position, but
that's cool.
It's really fun.
So so what are your plans with the I know you have, you guys probably have a kind of a plan with the business and things like that, but do you have any plans for, you personally and, your family and kind of where you want? It sounds like, all the traveling you're doing. Do you have any thoughts of moving down to South America?
We have, so in 2008, my wife and I, we had our first child, and our daughter, Ariella, was born in Argentina. And so through her birth, we all became residents of Argentina, and I was able to become a fishing guide. So I've guided in Argentina since 2008. Prior to that, I was just a fishing bum. And when my daughter was born, just life changed, and I had to put food on the table for more than just myself and wife. But we've been going back and forth for the past, since 2008 with the girls. They've gone to school in San Martin de los Andes half the year, and half the year here in West. And it's been a really neat thing to do with the family and the girls. And I've kind of guided double seasons. And so now with Big Sky Anglers, so to answer your question, we're going to kind of make West Yellowstone home. And we've decided that, Argentina, I will still go down there, but not for 5 to 6 months at a time like we have been doing.
Oh, okay.
So Argentina is something that I've got a number of buddies that I've worked with down there for many years, and they're going to be taking on, kind of a lot of the stuff that I was doing down there and receiving people. And I will go down, but West Yellowstone will be home, and I'm really excited about, kind of building this fly shop and making it a special place to help people go fishing, whether they're going on guide trips or just looking for good information in this area. And we, one thing I always really like to do, and I want to get into again is teaching fishing and bringing people together. So from tying clinics to, we do a little spay event. Kind of focus on trout spay. There's some neat trout spay rods out that are kind of fun, and they apply to some of the fishing we have here in the fall. So we've got a little event in September we're doing, and we're doing clinics throughout the summer, just kind of introduction to fly fishing and tying stuff, and hopefully can do more of that. So I see myself getting more into teaching and really running the fly shop, and I hope to continue to travel, but I'll probably guide less and focus my time more in the shop with people, and it's kind of a good place for me, and I'm excited to be able to come back to this, because that was always kind of what I really loved about this was teaching, and through teaching, learning, and bringing people in who have different experiences to also teach. And that was always the thing I liked most. So I'm excited to get back into that, or have time.
Yeah, totally. No, that's cool.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah.
Well, we're getting about there. I just had a couple more questions for you. Just thinking back to all your, kind of do-it-yourself sort of travels and things like you've done. What do you think is the biggest thing you've learned from all those years? And I mean, gosh, I didn't even realize you spent so much time, at a time down in down south. What do you think? Is there something that kind of comes to mind that kind of rings a bell and a big lesson learned from all of it?
Oh, I think that through all the fishing I've done, a lot of it has been around trout, but as I start finding myself, getting into saltwater, or say Dorado, or even steelhead, there's a lot of overlap in how you approach just fish in general. So, what I learned trout fishing in Argentina carries over here in Montana, or things I've learned here carry over there. And so it's something that, the more I've fished and the more fish I've kind of, been able to target, there's just a lot of things that kind of cross over. And I think that's really fun. is to keep trying new things. And I love going after a fish or trying to make a cast that I'm not good at. I've got to a point where, it's fun to get humbled, to come back and say, all right, like this just beat me. and feeling like, all right, I want to figure this out. I want to catch that fish, or I want to make that cast. And, you can get so comfortable or get so good at one type of fishing, but to just keep exploring new things has really been a lot of fun. And I think, that's the one thing as I've done this and traveled, you asked me about Norway and Atlantic salmon. I want to feel that. I want to compare it to steelhead. People say the water, the way they take, the way they fight is different. I want to feel that. I want to feel what that's like, and so
fish in the fish 24/7 up there. See what that feels like when you're
see if I really we'll talk sometime after I do that, and we'll see if I really
exactly. No, I think this is great. I think this is a real inspirational show for, I hope, everybody out there that. I know there's obviously costs and things like that, but there's costs of doing anything. And I think it just depends, if you want to travel, which, is something I want to do a little more of, then I think you got to set your mind to it and, set some goals or whatever it is, just get out there and do it. So no, it's, appreciate
I will give you one more,
I
will give you one more piece of advice is pick the right people to travel with.
Yeah.
That's really, and I say that. Pick a good group, and if you get a good group of your fishing buddies, that may be the most important thing right there. Is be with the right people.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah. It sounds like you met some people along the way down there, but that's sort of a different thing where you're kind of you got your people you're down there with, but you're going to run into some amazing people as well. Yeah,
that's right.
So cool. So what do you, in the next 6 months or so, anything you guys have coming up? You mentioned a couple of some seminars and things like that. Do you have some stuff with the Big Sky or personally that we can keep an eye on for?
This next 3 months here, we have a really busy season in West Yellowstone. We have good snowpack this year, and we're rivers here in the next couple of weeks are really going to be coming into shape, and should be we're just excited to have water, and we should have a really good salmon fly year on a number of rivers like the Madison, Gallatin, Yellowstone. And you usually get some golden stones mixed in, and then July is kind of a caddis month, and then we hit August and start fishing terrestrials all over. I love going up into that northern part of Yellowstone Park, that northeast corner, and Yellowstone Canyon. And so the next probably 3 to 4 months will be spent around here. And then we hit September and we kind of get into the fall, and fall's fun. We get quite a few fish migrating, brown trout kind of moving into, rivers out of lakes. And so we've got a little spay event that we started last year, and it was a lot of fun. We actually had Simon Gosworth come over, and he's a friend from, years ago, and he was kind enough to come over and help us get that going. And so it's kind of growing and have a number of other companies coming in, and that's a 2-day event on the Madison in the fall. And just fun. Cool. It's a free thing. And then October, we're going to be, just kind of, that's time where things in Montana, the weather can change, and your fishing options are limited, but we have some fun fishing right around West Yellowstone because the Madison in the park has a little warmer water than other places. It has the Firehole and Gibbon thermal features on those rivers, keep the water temps a little warmer, and the Madison gets some good fall run fish. And Joe and John, my partners here at Big Sky, they head up and guide the Missouri for 3 weeks in the fall. And so we October's still busy for us. And then, by November, we're kind of winding down and just regrouping. But we, the next 5-6 months are going to be, fun. We'll be fishing mainly in the States, and
nice.
Looking forward to summer. Yeah.
Well, I look forward to, keep an eye on the Simon event. I think Matt mentioned that, and that's really cool. I had Simon on in episode 9, and he broke down some of the spey casting, more of a steelhead focus. But no, that's cool. It sounds like you guys have some good stuff. I'll have links to all the notes you talked about here. But Justin, I just want to thank you for coming on and sharing your knowledge from all your trips down south and all the stories. I mean, it sounds like you've had a pretty, amazing life and some stories in fly fishing, and you're going to keep it going. So, I just want to thank you, and we'll keep an eye out on things as we move forward.
Thanks a lot, Dave. Yeah, it was a pleasure. Thank you.
Great. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay, man.
Okay.
Yeah,
bye.
Thanks. All right. Bye.
So there you go. If you want to find all the show notes with all the links we covered, just go to wetflyswing.com/show to get this show and all the other ones. If you get a chance, it would be awesome if you can quickly subscribe to us on iTunes if you're getting some entertainment or enjoyment out of this one. And just want to say thanks again for stopping by to check out the show today. I'm looking forward to catching up with you soon and hope to connect with you online or on the river. Later.
Thanks for listening to the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show. For notes and links from this episode, visit wetflyswing.com. And if you found this episode helpful, please subscribe and leave a review on iTunes.